Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something the way a man like Steve Harvey would say it. Real, direct, and straight from the heart. Too many women are walking around thinking they lost something precious when a man walks out of their life. But I'm here to flip that thinking upside down tonight. You didn't lose him. He lost you. And not just any woman. He lost the kind of woman he will spend the rest of his life trying to find again. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to you straight. The way a man like Steve Harvey would, real, unfiltered, and from experience. Too many women are walking around carrying a weight that doesn't belong to them. You're replaying memories, questioning your worth, wondering what you did wrong, all because a man failed to recognize what he had. But let me tell you something clearly tonight. Your value was never defined by his ability to see it. Not then, not now, not ever. You see, when a man overlooks a good woman, it's not because she lacks value. It's because he lacks awareness. It's because he doesn't yet have the emotional maturity, the depth, or the vision to recognize what's standing right in front of him. And that's where so many women get it twisted. You start shrinking yourself, doubting yourself, and questioning your worth, when in reality, nothing about you decreased. The only thing missing was his ability to see clearly. And you cannot measure your greatness through someone else's blindness. Think about it like this. If someone walks past a diamond and calls it a rock, does that make it any less valuable? No. It just means they don't know what a diamond looks like. And that's exactly what happens in relationships. Some people are not equipped to recognize loyalty, consistency, patience, and real love. They're used to chaos. They're used to temporary excitement. They're used to things that don't last. So when something real shows up, something grounded, something genuine, they don't know how to handle it. They misinterpret it. They undervalue it. And sometimes they walk away from it. And here's the truth that might sting a little, but it will set you free. Just because you gave your best doesn't mean he had the capacity to receive it. You could have been loving him the right way, supporting him, standing by him, believing in him, and still he couldn't see it. Not because it wasn't enough, but because he wasn't ready. And readiness is not something you can teach. You can love a man into maturity. You can't convince him to see your worth if he hasn't done the internal work to recognize value in the first place. Now I want you to understand something powerful. When you tie your self-worth to someone else's recognition, you give them control over how you feel about yourself. And that is a dangerous place to be, because people are inconsistent. People are flawed. People are still figuring themselves out. So if you rely on them to validate you, you will constantly feel unstable. One moment, you feel love. The next moment, you feel rejected. One moment, you feel chosen. The next moment, you feel discarded. That's not peace. That's emotional dependency. But when you know your value, when you truly, deeply understand who you are and what you bring to the table, something shifts inside you. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And you start saying, he wasn't ready for me. You stop chasing explanations and start embracing clarity. You stop trying to prove your worth and start protecting it. Because a woman who knows her value doesn't need constant reassurance. She carries herself differently. She speaks differently. She walks into a room with a quiet confidence and says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to validate it. And let me tell you something else. Your value is not just in what you do for someone. It's not just in how much you give, how much you sacrifice, or how much you tolerate. Your value is in who you are at your core. Your heart, your loyalty, your strength, your ability to love deeply and stand strong even when things get hard. That's where your value lives. And the right person will recognize that without you having to exhaust yourself trying to prove it. Too many women have been taught to overgive, to overextend, to prove their worth through how much they can endure. But real value doesn't come from how much pain you can tackle. It comes from knowing when to walk away from anything that doesn't honor you. Because the moment you stay where you are, not value, you start sending a message, not just to him, but to yourself, that this is what you think you deserve. And I'm here to remind you that you deserve more. You deserve someone who sees you clearly, someone who doesn't hesitate, someone who doesn't make you question where you stand, someone who recognizes your worth, not because you demanded it, but because they have the awareness to appreciate it naturally. And until that person shows up, your job is not to settle. Your job is not to chase. Your job is to stand firm in who you are and refuse to shrink for anyone who cannot meet you where you stand. So stop replaying the past like you lost something valuable. Stop questioning yourself because someone else lacked vision. You didn't lose your worth when he walked away. If anything, you were given clarity. You were shown that the person you were with could not see what you carry. And that clarity is not a loss. It's a gift, because now you know that your value is something that must be recognized, not negotiated. And the moment you fully embrace that truth, everything changes. The way you love changes. The way you choose changes. The way you see yourself changes. And when that happens, you stop attracting people who overlook you, and you start attracting people who appreciate you. Because the energy you carry is different when you know your worth. It's not loud. It's not desperate. It's steady, it's confident, and it's undeniable. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you in a way that hits home. The way a man like Steve Harvey would break it down. Clear, honest, and without sugarcoating it. When a man walks away from a woman who loved him, supported him, and stood by him, you have to stop asking yourself what you lost and start understanding what his actions revealed. Because a man who leaves a good woman isn't exposing her flaws. He's exposing his own limitations. You see, people don't walk away from something real because it isn't valuable. They walk away because they don't have the capacity to handle it. That's a hard truth, but it's a freeing one if you really understand it. Because when you realize that his decision to leave had more to do with his internal struggles than anything you lacked, you stop taking it personally. You stop internalizing his confusion as your failure. And you start seeing it for what it really is, a reflection of where he is in life, mentally and emotionally. A man who is unsure of himself will always struggle to recognize a woman who is sure of herself. A man who lacks direction will feel uncomfortable with a woman who brings stability. A man who hasn't healed from his past will misinterpret genuine love as pressure or obligation. And instead of rising to meet that love, he retreats from it, not because it's wrong, but because it requires a version of him that he hasn't become yet. And here's where a lot of women get stuck. You try to make sense of his behavior using your level of understanding. You think, if I had someone like me, I would never let him go. And you're right, but that's because you think differently. You love differently. You value differently. And expecting someone else to operate at your level when they haven't grown into it yet will only leave you confused and hurt. Sometimes a man walks away, not because he found better, but because he doesn't know how to be better. Let that sink in. It's not about you being replaced. It's about him not being ready. And instead of stepping up instead of doing the work, instead of becoming the man you needed him to be, he chose the easier route, leaving, because staying would have required accountability. Staying would have required growth. Staying would have required him to face himself, and not every man is ready to do that. So when he leaves, what he's really saying is, I'm not prepared for what you bring. He's saying, I can't meet you where you are. He's saying, I don't have the tools to handle this kind of connection. And once you understand that, you stop feeling rejected and you start feeling released. Because why would you want to hold on to someone who doesn't have the capacity to love you the way you deserve? Now, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. Of course it hurts. Anytime you invest your time, your energy, your emotions into someone, and they walk away, it leaves a mark. But pain doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes pain is just a process of seeing the truth clearly. And the truth is, a man who leaves a good woman is not walking into something greater. He's walking away from something he didn't understand. And later on, when life starts teaching him lessons, when he encounters situations that require depth, patience, and real partnership, he's going to remember you. He's going to remember the way you showed up for him, the way you supported him without conditions, the way you brought peace instead of chaos. And that's when it's going to hit him. Not immediately, not when he's distracted, but later when everything settles and reality sets in. But by that time, you're not supposed to be in the same place emotionally. You're not supposed to be waiting for him to figure it out, because your growth doesn't pause for someone else's confusion. Your life doesn't stand still while he learns lessons you already understood. And this is where your power comes in, choosing not to go backwards. You have to understand that his inability to stay consistent, his decision to walk away, his lack of clarity, that was never your burden to carry. That was his journey. That was his work. And when he chose not to do that work, he disqualified himself from being in your life. He disqualified himself from being in your life, not because you pushed him away, but because he wasn't equipped to stay. And let me tell you something that will shift your perspective completely. Rejection is not always someone telling you that you're not enough. Sometimes it's life removing someone who is not enough for you. Read that again in your spirit. Because when you start seeing it that way, you stop chasing closure from the person who walked away, and you start creating your own closure through understanding. You start realizing that everything you gave was real. Everything you felt was valid. And just because he couldn't match it doesn't mean it was too much. It just means it was too much for him. And there's a difference. But there's a difference, a big difference. So don't sit there thinking you lost something special. Understand that what happened reveals something important. It showed you that not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Not everyone is capable of growing with you. And not everyone deserves access to the kind of love you bring. And once you truly accept that, you stop looking back with regret and you start looking forward with clarity. Because now you know, when a man walks away from a good woman, he's not proving her lack of worth. He's revealing his lack of readiness. Ladies and gentlemen, let me slow this down and speak to your spirit the way a man like Steve Harvey would, because this right here is where everything changes. We're talking about self-worth, and not the kind you say out loud just to feel better, but the kind you live by. But the kind you live by, the kind that shows up in your decisions, your boundaries, and the way you allow people to treat you. You see, a lot of people say they know their worth, but their actions tell a different story. Because self-worth is not what you say when everything is going right. Self-worth is what you demonstrate when someone disrespects you, when someone neglects you, when someone shows you through their actions that they don't value you the way you deserve. That's where the truth comes out. That's where you either stand in your value or you abandon it. And here's the reality. How you see yourself teaches people how to see you. You don't have to sit someone down and explain your worth if you're living it. Your standards will speak for you. Your boundaries will speak for you. Your boundaries will speak for you. The way you walk away from things that don't serve you will speak louder than anything you could ever say. Because people don't just listen to your words, they study your behavior. If you keep accepting inconsistency, they will believe inconsistency is enough. If you keep forgiving disrespect without change, they will believe disrespect is acceptable. If you keep showing up for someone who doesn't show up for you, they will believe your presence is guaranteed no matter how they treat you. And that's not because they're necessarily bad people. It's because you have shown them what you're willing to tolerate. That's why self-worth is not just a feeling, it's a standard. It's the standard. It's a line you draw that says, this is what I accept, and this is what I don't. And the moment someone crosses that line and you do nothing about it, you move the line, you lower the standard, and over time you start living in a space that is far below what you truly deserve, all because you didn't enforce the value you claim to have. Now, let me be clear about something. Having standards doesn't make you difficult. Having boundaries doesn't make you hard to love. It makes you clear. It makes you grounded. It makes you someone who understands that love is not about losing yourself to keep someone else. Real love doesn't require you to shrink, to silence yourself, or to constantly prove your worth. Real love meets you where you stand and respects what you bring. But if you don't believe that about yourself, you will accept less. You will convince yourself that maybe you're asking for too much. Maybe you should be more patient. Maybe you should give them more time. And before you know it, you're overextending, overgiving, and overcompromising just to keep someone in your life who isn't even meeting you halfway. That's not love. That's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of letting go of something you invested in. And fear will keep you in places that self-worth would have walked away from a long time ago. A woman who truly knows her worth doesn't chase consistency. She expects it. She doesn't beg for attention. She attracts it. She doesn't tolerate confusion. She chooses clarity. And when she doesn't get those things, she doesn't argue. She doesn't beg. She doesn't try to convince someone to step up. She steps away because she understands that her peace is more important than trying to fix someone who isn't ready to change. And let me tell you something powerful. When you start operating from that level of self-worth, everything around you changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes better, but because your standards become higher. You stop entertaining things that once distracted you. You stop holding on to people who once drained you. You stop settling for situations that once confused you. And yes, it might feel lonely at first, because when you raise your standards, not everyone can come with you. Some people will fall away. Some connections will end. Some situations will no longer fit your life. But that's not a loss. That's alignment. That's you making space for something better. Because the truth is, you cannot receive what you deserve if you're still holding on to what you've outgrown. You cannot welcome a healthy, consistent, and fulfilling relationship into your life if you're still entertaining inconsistency, confusion, and emotional unavailability. Your life will always reflect what you allow. So if you want something different, you have to be willing to do something different. You have to be willing to say no even when it's hard. You have to be willing to walk away even when you still care. You have to be willing to choose yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. Because self-worth is not proven in comfort. It's proven in discipline. It's proven in the moments where you want to go back, but you don't. Where you want to accept less, but you refuse. Where you want to hold on, but you let go anyway, because you know deep down that what you're holding on to is not aligned with who you are becoming. And when you reach that point, you stop asking people to treat you right. You require it, not through force, not through pressure, but through presence, through the way you carry yourself, through the way you remove yourself from anything that doesn't honor you. And that's when everything shifts, because now anyone who enters your life knows exactly who they're dealing with. Not someone who needs validation, but someone who already has it within herself. Not someone who is reaching for love, but someone who embodies it. And that kind of energy, that kind of confidence, that kind of self-worth, it cannot be ignored and it cannot be easily replaced. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring this home for you the way a man like Steve Harvey would, because this last truth right here is what separates heartbreak from transformation. We're talking about understanding that the right man, the man who is aligned, the man who is ready, the man who knows what he's looking at, he doesn't need to be convinced of your value. He recognizes it naturally. See, one of the biggest mistakes people make after being hurt is thinking they have to explain themselves better next time. They think, maybe if I communicate more clearly, maybe if I show him more, maybe if I prove myself just a little bit harder. But let me tell you something, that mindset will keep you stuck in the same cycle with different faces. Because the right man doesn't require performance. He doesn't require you to exhaust yourself trying to be seen. He sees you. You have to understand the difference between someone who is curious about you and someone who is certain about you. Curiosity will keep you in a loop of confusion. It will give you moments of attention, moments of affection, moments that feel like something is building, but it never fully arrives. Certainty, on the other hand, is clear. It's consistent. It doesn't leave you guessing where you stand. And when a man is certain about you, his actions reflect that without hesitation. The wrong man will make you feel like you're too much and not enough at the same time, too emotional, too demanding, too strong, but somehow still not enough to be chosen fully. That confusion is not love. That's incompatibility mixed with emotional unavailability. And the longer you stay in that space, the more you start questioning yourself instead of quest. I named the situation. But the right man, he won't make you feel like a burden for expressing your needs. He won't make you feel like you have to compete for his attention. He won't make you feel like love is something you have to earn through struggle. Instead, he will make space for you. He will appreciate your presence. He will recognize the peace, the strength, and the loyalty you bring into his life. And here's the key. Recognition is not something you can force. You can't teach someone to value you if they don't already understand value. You can't coach someone into appreciating you if they're still operating from a place of immaturity. And you definitely can't build something solid with someone who is still unsure about whether they even want to build it all. That's why the right connection feels different. It's not perfect, but it's clear. It's not without effort, but it's mutual. You're not the only one trying. You're not the only one investing. You're not the only one showing up. And that balance That reciprocity, that shared intention, that's what makes a relationship sustainable. Now, let me tell you something that might challenge you a little bit. Sometimes the reason you don't experience that kind of connection right away is not because it doesn't exist. It's because you're still holding onto the wrong one. You're still emotionally tied to someone who already showed you they couldn't meet you where you are. And as long as your energy is invested there, you block yourself from fully receiving something better. You can't hold on to someone who undervalued you and expect to attract someone who appreciates you at the same time. It doesn't work like that. You have to release what no longer aligns so you can make room for what does. And I know that's not easy. Letting go of history, of memories, of what you hope something could be, that takes strength. But holding on to it takes even more out of you over time. And when you finally let go, when you finally choose yourself completely, something shifts. You stop looking for validation in the wrong places. You stop entertaining half-hearted efforts. You stop responding to things that once would have pulled you back in. Because now you see clearly. Now you understand that love is not supposed to feel like confusion, inconsistency, or emotional instability. And when the right man enters your life, you won't have to decode his behavior. You won't have to question his intentions. You won't have to wonder where you stand. You'll feel it in the way he shows up, in the way he communicates, and the way he prioritizes you without making excuses. And that kind of clarity, it brings peace. Because at the end of the day, love is not just about passion. It's about alignment. It's about two people meeting each other with the same level of readiness, the same level of intention, and the same willingness to build something real. And when that happens, it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. So stop thinking that what you lost was your only chance at love. Stop believing that you have to fight to be chosen. You were never meant to convince someone to see your worth. The right person will recognize it the moment you step into their life. And when that happens, you'll finally understand